Welcome, everybody, and happy holidays. So we're here for the Release Trapped Emotions Live, and today we're going to change it up a little bit. I'm just pulling up the group here so I can have it on my phone and see any comments. Here we go. Great. Okay. So, so, the way that I'm kind of changing Release Trapped Emotions Live in the group starting this month, but moving forward in 2025, is I want to dedicate the first part of the live to talking about various emotions and how to navigate them, how to deal with them, what are what I call the ninja hacks that we can use to help ourselves manage our emotions. And then we'll have my clients come in around the half of the hour to sample you, to show you what it means and what it looks like to release trapped emotions, to see if it's something that can support you as well. So today I'm going to dive right into it. And I want to talk about fear, because fear is the number one emotion that trips us up. It's the number one emotion that makes us make believe things about ourselves and the world around us. And therefore, it gets us stuck. It gets us making the wrong decisions, taking the wrong path. Now, even though I'm saying that, if we take just a pause and we take a step back in the macro view, there never really is a wrong decision or a wrong path, right? It's part of our life experience to learn. So the quicker we can adjust, the quicker we can shift, the faster we can evolve on our path. So that's the distinction. So when I say, that emotions will make us make the wrong decision, okay, or choose the wrong thing, I mean it that it's delaying your evolution. It's delaying your processing to getting to where it is that you want, or delaying the process of you feeling better, or delaying the process of you feeling getting more confidence, or believing in yourself more, right? Or achieving the revenue goals that you want. So I know some of you in the group are here because you're business owners and you want to understand how your emotions affect your revenue, because they absolutely do. And some of you are here in the group to just really understand yourself better, how to raise your confidence, how to raise your self-esteem, how to believe in yourself more, how to really understand what parts of your past are triggering you unconsciously, and then getting to that place of just feeling better, right? So whatever the reason is, right, know that doing this work will help you get to where you want to get to. But, and this is the but, when I talk about the wrong decision or the wrong path, it's still not the wrong decision or the wrong path. Does that make sense? Because in the grand scheme of your evolution, it's meant to be anyway. But when we do make those decisions that or choose things that aren't necessarily for our best interest, it makes our ascension slower. So instead of being a curve that goes this way, it's a curve that goes this way. So there's longer ramping period, longer processing time. Okay, so I just wanted to make that distinction. So fear is, it's a pesky little emotion, because when we're afraid, what happens? We hold back, we avoid, we choose from scarcity and limitation and lack. We don't tap into our courage. Therefore, then we're not empowered. it has us really make up that there's this alternate reality, because when we're afraid, the fear is coming up based on experiences of the past. So unless you're in a life or death situation, fear has no business to be in your consciousness, right? Fear is really meant to be there only if you're in a life or death situation, right? So if you're not in a life or death situation and you are afraid, that's being made up, right? So that's the made up reality that the conscious mind creates based on past events. And I'll tell you how that process works in a minute. So I'm just trying, I lost my train of thought here. What was I saying? Okay, so it makes up, right, this reality because you're not in a life or death situation. And so what you're thinking that you're afraid of, so what your fear is really about something that is from the past that no longer is present. And so therefore it's made up, right? So it could be, you're afraid of failing because you failed sometime in the past. You're afraid of not having enough because you haven't had enough at some point in your life. You're afraid of being rejected because at some point in your life you've been rejected. You're afraid of being ridiculed or judged because at some point in your life you've been ridiculed or judged. And so that made up reality in the moment triggers that fear, which then triggers a decision-making process that's not in your best interest, right? And that decision-making process that's not in your best interest has you then get veered off the track. So instead of going down your evolutionary track right here, you get veered off. And that's why I say it's the wrong decision, because it's taking you off track, which all it's doing is just delaying, right? So then if now we know, it's like, okay, so I'm just referring back to past events because I'm getting triggered and the reality of my fear is really not real, then how do I, right? How do I make it so that I don't create these unrealistic conversations within myself? Well, that's part of the work, right? It's really understanding what part of your past is being triggered, what is the conversation that's being triggered, and creating a new conversation. That's the work that you're going to witness here in a little bit as we release some trapped emotions for some of my clients. Now, there's a lot of different modalities out there. There's, and they all do something, right? They all work and they all do something. I've dabbled in a lot of them. And every time I've done a different modality, I've always received something positive from it, right? So you have to find the one that speaks to you and the one that works, that you feel is going to work for you. The modality that I use is a modality called Emotional Ninja. It's a modality that I've created by combining emotion code, which is its own separate modality, and neurolinguistic programming, which is its own separate modality. And that's what you're going to witness on this call today. So when we tap into the subconscious and we identify events from the past that are triggering you, that have been internalized with a specific disempowering conversation, then we can do something about it, right? Once we identify it and we know when it was created, so how old you were and what was the event that spurred this disempowering conversation, then we can do something about it. And so you say, well, how does this all work really? Well, first and foremost, neuroscience tells us that the way that the brain functions is that it is constantly predicting. Okay. So how does it predict? Well, number one, as you live your life and as you have experiences, it records all those experiences as energetic imprints in your subconscious. And the heart is the seat of your subconscious, by the way. So a lot of what we hold on to around the heart space. That's why sometimes we feel a heaviness on our heart. That's why sometimes we hear something, we witness something, and we hear like our heart is literally being squeezed. That is the weight of the emotional baggage, or otherwise known as trapped emotions, that we hold around the heart space, because the heart is the seat of the subconscious. So as we experience life, we are recording our experiences, positive and negative, but the negative ones have a heavier imprint because they're attached to an emotion. And when that emotion is trapped, meaning emotions are meant to go through our body, right? They're meant to come in through the right side, leave the left side. Sometimes, though, because maybe we're not cognitively developed enough because we're too little or young, maybe it's a shock, maybe it's just something we cannot understand, it doesn't get processed properly, and then it gets trapped in the subconscious. And so that's what we call trapped emotions. It's the energetic imprint of an experience that had a specific conversation that was disempowering, that was not processed through the normal processing of our body, through our meridian system, so through our energetic body, and was trapped and was held on to up until today, right? So that predicts, so that process, the mind, right? It brings in information, it imprints it in the subconscious, because the conscious mind cannot hold all of the data that we process on a regular basis. It has to put it somewhere, and it has to store it somewhere, and that's the subconscious. So it holds about 10% of all of the information. So as it's recording, as it's receiving, the brain is receiving information, it's processing it, and it's recording it, it then feeds into that recording, okay, into the subconscious to predict. So it's constantly predicting based on our past experiences. And so what it does is it's like, oh, wait a minute. We experienced that before. That feels familiar. And it'll tap into the memory banks. And if the experience is something that was not good, something that we didn't like, something that was disempowering, something that was hurtful, we will try to avoid it. The brain will try to keep you safe and try to have you avoid. That's why we avoid failure. We avoid, fear, things that make us fearful. We avoid to feel experiences, re-feel experiences that we've already felt. And so our job is really to understand this process within us, because each and every one of us has its own process. My process is different than your process, and different than your husband or wife's process, than your children's process, than your parents' process. We're all different. So as we process things differently, we want to understand ourselves deeper. And so the work that we do by releasing trapped emotions allows you to understand yourself more, understand yourself, how you've tapped into and triggered, right, into some of the past emotions and events, and how they're affecting you today in your life. I was just talking to somebody before I hopped on this call, where she realizes that she cannot let go of things. And she gave me this example of this one girl that 10 years ago did something to her. And still to this day, when she hears her name, or when she hears that somebody is her friend, she feels triggered. She feels this resentment coming up. She feels this like boiling point anger. And she cannot understand why 10 years later, she still thinks about it, or has even a qualm about it, right? And that's because there's something triggered, that she's triggered into resentment. And my guess, we haven't delved into her past just yet, because she's a new client. My guess is that she experienced something in her past, most likely, in her younger years, that what happened with this woman triggered, so reminded her, right? The brain went into those memory banks and predicted, like, oh, we felt this. This is what this is happening now. And it registered it, and it recorded it in a certain way with a certain conversation. Okay. So we then need to go into the subconscious, unpack it. We need to identify the conversation that she made up about it, and then create a new conversation. Okay. Which I call power affirmations. So when we're looking at and understanding the process of the conscious mind, constantly trying to predict based on the past experiences, and then trying to project into the future what's going to happen, that's the falsehood. That is the false reality that fear creates, that even some other emotions create, like shame. But fear is the biggest one. It's just really creating this surreal reality that's not based on anything real, because it's based on things that we've made up. And it's projected it into the future as real. And then that's what we are fearful of. We're fearful of something that hasn't happened yet, that's not a life or death situation, that's maybe something possible going to happen in the future, but we don't even know. And so then we make decisions based on that. Now that's kind of entangled, right? That doesn't make really sense. It doesn't make much sense. And so that's why it's important to understand how emotions create patterns in our life, create results that we don't want. And specifically, when we talk about business, they create monetary results that we don't want because we're making decisions that aren't in alignment with reality. I'm hoping this is making sense. And if you want to ask any questions, please put it in the chat. I'll check the chat every so often so that we can make sure that we get your questions answered. So here we are. We're having a fear about something, but now we know that the fear that we're fearing is a mental projection of our conscious mind, because it's predicting from the past and it's projecting it into the future, something that's not even happened, that maybe might happen, might not happen, we don't know. And we're making decisions on it. Right? So now that we know that, it's like, okay, well, what can we do? What's the emotional ninja hack that we can tap into, that we can use to manage our fear, to really take a step back, take a breath, and say, okay, wait a minute. I'm experiencing fear right now. Am I really in danger? No, it's not a life or death situation. Okay, so since I'm not in danger, then what am I making up? Because the fear is made up, right? So what am I making up? And start asking your questions like, what is this reminding me of? What could I be triggered into right now? If this isn't real, then what am I really afraid of? So start asking yourself those questions. And then this is the emotional ninja part. The key is to act even though you're afraid. So act, take action, take a step, even though you are scared shitless. Say yes, even if you're afraid. Say no, even if you're afraid. Do the video. Say the thing, even though you are afraid. That is tapping into positive emotion, which is courage, which allows you to empower yourself in the face of fear, knowing that you just made it all up, that it's just a mental projection of something unreal, and that as you can reel yourself back in, you can then make a more empowered and informed decision from your own inner processing. Does that make sense? I'm hoping it does. If you have questions or if you want to comment or anything, please do so in the comments. I don't see any yet, but, and Dina, please do let me know if you see any comments and I'm not seeing them so that I can answer. So in a few minutes, we'll have some of my clients come on to actually show you, demonstrate. And if you've been on these before, you already know how it works, but maybe now you have a deeper understanding of the behind the scenes process. So speaking of fear, right? I'm going to give you this example. I used to do, when I first started doing this work, I used to do volunteer for a nonprofit for women in domestic violence shelters. And I used to do these empowerment workshops. And I remember, I always remember this woman. Obviously, these women were in shelters, and they were there because of their violent relationship. And I remember this one woman asked me, well, I might go back to my family and move out of state, so I can get away from my ex or from my husband or from whoever it was, I don't remember. Um, but I don't know, maybe I should stay here. Anyway, she was really in her questioning about it. And so I had her just look at, right, just look at her values and what was it that she valued, right? She valued respect, she valued love, and I think the third one, I can't remember what it was, um kindness, maybe something like that. And so I said, okay, so in making this decision to move back home so that you can be supported by your family, or move back in with your abuser, are you respected at home? Well, yes, of course. Are you loved at home? Well, yes, of course. Are they kind to you at home? Well, yeah, of course. Okay, great. How about at home with your abuser? Are you respected? No. Are you loved? No. Uh, are you treated kindly? No. Okay. So now, based on your values, where is the decision that you get to make from, right? Because she was really in fear mode. She was in the fear of letting go of the relationship and what could happen, right? And she was in the shelter, obviously, to take the first steps to get herself out of the situation. But I could tell she was still tethered into the relationship with the abuser. So the moment she saw in a more logical way, right? And looking at making decisions from what she really wanted and what she valued, that opened up a whole new way of looking at how she could make decisions, how she could take more empowered steps, and how she could really create a safe life for her and her kids. And so when we look at fear and we take that step back and we understand the falsehood that it gives us, it's really about also then looking at making the decisions, looking at our values and our principles and bringing those into the decision making process. So now you're not only facing the fear, recognizing that there's a trigger, recognizing that what it's telling you is fake, what it's projecting onto the future is fake, and that you're just in this emotional reaction. Bringing in your values and your principles can help you step into courage, face the fear, and act anyway.